Tonight we're going to be talking about, I think, a very important topic, and that's gluten myths. Myths about the gluten-free diet. There's so many different problems around the gluten-free diet that people just don't realize are myths or misconceptions about the gluten-free diet. And probably one of the biggest ones is that the diet is unhealthy. The diet is nutritionally unsound. And that is, I hear this out of the words of gastrointestinal doctors on a frequent basis. They'll say the gluten-free diet, if you go on the diet and you don't have celiac disease, you can struggle with malnourishment. You can have certain vitamin and mineral deficiencies, or be at greater risk for vitamin and mineral deficiencies. And this is a huge myth. This is actually extremely untrue. The gluten-free diet in and of itself, I want to teach you a little bit about the history of what we know about grain in the United States. So if we're talking about the gluten-free diet as being nutritionally unsound, what we have to understand is this is only referring to products. So if you buy processed gluten-free food products and that are labeled gluten-free, then you're going and you use these as staple foods in your diet, that diet is going to be nutritionally unsound, because the processed food products, the things that are made with your corn flours and rice flours, the things that are made that are highly glycemic, that have hydrogenated fat added to them, they're very unhealthy. They're not good for you. You understand that when you process a grain, there's a reason why, if you look at any loaf of bread, any box of crackers, or any grain-based product, pasta, cereal, etc., there are vitamins and minerals that have been added to the product. This is oftentimes referred to as fortification, meaning that by law in the United States, the food manufacturer who produces that processed grain-based product has to add certain vitamins and minerals back into the product. And one of the reasons why, if we go back in time, in 1943, the United States government banned the sale of grain. So they banned the sale of grain, processed grain, in 1943. And one of the reasons why it was responsible for creating about 8,000 deaths per year from diseases like beriberi and pellagra. Now, these are B vitamin deficiency diseases. And the reason why is that these grain sources of food were extremely low in B vitamins. So when people were eating them as a staple, they were becoming devoid of B vitamins. Yet the heavy carbohydrate load of grain requires that you need B vitamins to process it, to get the energy from it, but the grain itself doesn't have the B vitamin. So you're basically raping your body of the B vitamins while you're trying to eat these processed food products, and then what ends up happening is you develop major vitamin deficiency states. And again, beriberi and pellagra can kill you if it gets severe enough. So again, this happened in 1943. A lot of people don't realize that, because the cereal manufacturers came back, and instead of saying, don't eat our cereal because we're going to cause vitamin deficiency and kill you, they came back and said, hey, eat more of us now because we're fortified with vitamins and minerals, so we're even healthier for you. So it's taking a food that was already bad for you and adding synthetic vitamins to that food so that you met a legal requirement to prevent death does not make a food product healthy. So from that perspective, the gluten-free diet, the gluten-free diet is nutritionally unsound. But from the perspective of just not eating grain, there's no nutritional deficit that you run a greater risk of in a diet like that. If you're eating lots of fresh fruits and vegetables and meats and nuts, you're not running the risk of having nutritional deficit, because again, if you're eating adequate quantities of vegetables, you're going to get the fiber that you need, even if you're not consuming the grain. So this is a big myth. And I want to make sure that you understand that I get the question all the time. You guys write in all the time. My doctor said the gluten-free diet was dangerous. Can you clarify on why that's the case? Why is it nutritionally unsound? The answer is it's not. It's not nutritionally unsound unless you're gravitating toward a bunch of processed junk food that's being labeled gluten-free. And remember, those of you maybe that are new to the show, if you don't know the difference between gluten-free and true gluten-free, you need to go get a copy of No Grain, No Pain, which is my best-selling book that kind of exposes the gluten-free food industry for basically lying to us for the past 70 years about what is actually gluten and what is not actually gluten. And if you don't know that information, you should get access to it right away. Okay, so myth number one exposed. We've got Again, the fact that gluten-free diets are nutritionally unsound, not true at all. Let's see here. We've got Tracy chiming in from NOLA. Good evening, Tracy. Thanks for joining us. Tiffany is chiming in. Well, we'll get your question here in just a minute, Tiffany. Marie from Toronto, Canada. And, I like that question. We'll get to that too. Laura from Ontario, Canada. So, again, keep chiming in. Let me know where you're from, folks. Question coming in. What do you think about wheat in Europe? There's this myth. This is another myth. We're going to go ahead and put it up here on the list because it's a great question. Grain or wheat in general is healthier than in the U.S. This is a myth. It's not true. Some people will say, well, I went to Europe and I cheated on my gluten-free diet and I didn't feel as horrific as I do here. Okay, understand there's a difference between gluten sensitivity and glyphosate poisoning. Now, one of the things that makes the grain in Europe less detrimental, but not from a gluten perspective. Again, we're talking about gluten. We're not talking about glyphosate. Glyphosate as a pesticide makes many people sick, and it makes many people sick who may not even be gluten sensitive, but when they eat gluten or gluten-containing grains, they don't feel well, but they're not necessarily gluten sensitive. They're actually being poisoned by the glyphosate. Understand there are a number of different things that are found in grain, pesticides included. We've got pesticides and herbicides, things like glyphosate and atrazine that can be found in grains, but then we also have things like molds and mycotoxins, and we've got heavy metals that can be found in grain, and we've got a number of other compounds or chemicals that aren't even gluten at all, different families of proteins, century plant proteins, lectins, wheat germ agglutinin, a number of different things that are found in grain that are not gluten that can still cause inflammation and can still cause damage, whether it's grown in Europe or whether it's grown here in the U.S. The big difference between European grains and the grains grown in the U.S. is this right here, because it's become practice in the last 30 years for farmers to double spray all, most grains. Wheat and corn are notorious for the farmer will spray the field before they plant the crop with glyphosate, but then they'll apply glyphosate before harvest as a drying agent to before they actually pull up or combine the grain to start getting it ready for production. So glyphosate is one difference, but it's not that Europe grain is somehow has less gluten in it or somehow healthier from a gluten perspective. So from a gluten issue, European grains are no healthier than American grains. If you're gluten sensitive, you shouldn't be eating European grains no more than you should be eating grains from any country for that matter. But again, there is a stronger dose of glyphosate in grains grown here in the U.S. where farmers are double spraying the field. So good question. Thanks for asking it. Okay, so Emily's chiming in. I have friends who go grain-free most of the time, but say that rice doesn't bother them if they eat it every once in a while. How can I help explain that all grain can cause inflammation for those, let's see here, for those who are gluten sensitive, even if they don't feel it? Well, understand that food can be the slowest form of poison. You don't have to have an acute reaction to food. As a matter of fact, most people don't have an acute reaction to food. They have a delayed or a chronic reaction to food, and that it's an accumulative effect. The more you eat it over time, the more it can stress or put a stress on your body. So that being said, if we're just talking about rice in general, rice, and we can call this the next myth because rice and corn are considered gluten-free, and so this is not true. Rice and corn both contain different forms of gluten, and for example, rice by concentration, 5% of the protein in rice has gluten. Corn, on the other hand, is 55%. And so this is maybe something, Emily, that you want to explain to your friends, is that yes, rice has gluten in it. It's less gluten, but remember that gluten can cause damage at 20 parts per million, which is about the size of a breadcrumb. It's not a whole lot of gluten required to create an inflammatory response. Remember that high blood pressure is a form of inflammation, and most people that have high blood pressure don't feel it. And there are a number of other diseases like that. Most forms of autoimmune disease take 3 decades to develop, and become majorly symptomatic as a result of persistent chronic exposure and damage. And so if your friends are comfortable with eating it every once in a while, you just have to put it to them in that light. And look, the reality is they may still not want to make that change. Many people don't want to, because they want to continue to justify eating something that's not good for them because they like the way it tastes. So they're choosing taste over health. And that some people are going to do it that way, and you have to let them as adults make those types of decisions for themselves. But the big thing is that rice and corn do contain gluten. They're not the same kind of gluten as that you find in wheat, barley, and rye, but they are forms of gluten. And research studies, particularly on rice, have shown that the proteins in rice create something called FPIES, F-P-I-E-S, which is food protein induced enterocolitis, which is a fancy way of saying intestines of the, or not intestines, but inflammation of the intestines. Whereas corn contains a type of gluten called zein, and it's been shown in at least a dozen studies now that people with gluten sensitivity also react to corn gluten, and it creates a chronic inflammatory response in them as well. I would say this: remember that most people that develop or that get diagnosed with celiac disease, they go from doctor to doctor with a broad array of varying different symptoms before they finally get a diagnosis. And usually by the time a person gets a diagnosis, it's because they've gotten to the point where they're so chronically sick that they've lost their capacity for function. I like to say we don't want to wait till you lose your capacity to function to get your diagnosis. We want to make sure that you always maintain your capacity for function and good health. And look, one of the ways we do that is by choosing food intelligently, by choosing the right foods intelligently over time. If you choose the wrong foods over time, what does that equate to? Look, we know that eating the wrong food is linked to cancer, it's linked to heart disease, it's linked to obesity, it's linked to diabetes, it's linked to autoimmune disease, it's linked to every known form of chronic autoimmune disease. And most of the foods that we eat, even like a soda, which is not good for you, full of corn, sugar, and other problematic ingredients, you may not feel bad directly when you drink it, but is it hurting you? Absolutely, it's hurting you. So people that justify eating something because they don't feel damaged when they eat it, even though that food is not healthy for them to consume, are just fooling themselves. And so you don't want to play privy to that type of nonsense. I would just simply say the best thing you can do is straight shoot it. Front honesty is the best policy. And when people are not honest with themselves, there's not going to be a whole lot that you can do to convince them. Is that gluten... Sorry. Is that a gluten-free diet rather, is a cure-all for all disease. It's not. I get a lot of people, that go around and say, oh, you need to be gluten-free, oh, you need to be gluten-free. And oftentimes they're right. Look, again, like I said before, if you're struggling with autoimmune disease and you haven't been tested for gluten sensitivity, then one of the best and quickest and easiest things that you could do is get tested so you can get clarity. But just because, even if you're gluten sensitive and you have an autoimmune disease, going gluten-free is not necessarily a magic bullet. And I want to be clear on that. Many people do really, really well going gluten-free. Their digestion improves, their bowel flow improves, their hormone levels improve, their pain levels improve, their chronic iron deficiency anemias can go away. There are a lot of really great things that can happen to a person who goes gluten-free when they're gluten sensitive and they've been eating gluten for years. However, remember, autoimmune disease is always multifactorial. As a matter of fact, those of you who want to learn more about autoimmune disease specifically, what I want you to do is go over to Autoimmune Revolution and make sure you sign up. This is a summit, an online summit. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. It's a summit I've hosted where I've interviewed more than 33 of the world's leading experts on autoimmune disease, just basically to get you information, to help you have information where you can take that information, you can use it, you can apply it in your own life. But autoimmune disease is multifactorial. One of the things that within the Autoimmune Revolution that I personally will be talking about is the mechanism behind autoimmune disease, not the 4 triggers, but the actual mechanisms of autoimmune disease and what you need to know, as well as the history of autoimmune disease. And it's very, very important. If you understand the history and you understand the mechanisms, then you understand how to have an intelligent conversation with your doctor. But again, gluten-free diets are not cure-alls. Going gluten-free doesn't cure everything, because most forms of autoimmune disease may dramatically improve with a gluten-free diet, but they don't necessarily completely go away. There's an old saying, you probably heard me say it before, everybody's entitled to more than one problem, meaning you can be gluten sensitive, but you could also have infection, you could also have nutritional deficiencies, you could also have additional food allergies, you could also have heavy metal toxicity, you could also be suffering from a vaccine side effect. You know, many of the vaccines today that we know that cause autoimmune disease, like neurological autoimmune disease like Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is when your hands and your feet start to go numb and your muscles go weak. A lot of people develop those types of symptoms directly after, you know, a flu shot, or directly after like the HPV shot, the human papillomavirus shot, which is one of the newer vaccines that hasn't really been safety tested for very long. But those are known, those are facts, right? Those are things that we know can be triggers. So again, just because you go gluten-free and you feel better doesn't mean that the gluten is necessarily going to cure the autoimmune disease in its entirety. So it's important to understand, because, you know, a lot of people, one of the struggles that we have, and one of the reasons I founded Gluten Free Society, was because so many doctors poo-poo the gluten-free diet. They say, oh, that doesn't do that and it doesn't do that. And one of the reasons why is there's been this hyperinflation of people saying the gluten-free diet is a cure-all, and when the reality is that it's very helpful, and sometimes it's a necessary step in the process of helping people overcome an autoimmune process, but it isn't the only step, and it is not a cure-all. It can be dramatically helpful. Again, I don't want to underemphasize how important it can be to go gluten-free, but at the same time, I want to emphasize that there are definitely other factors involved with the development of autoimmune disease. And so the reason I said it is some people, you know, they follow a gluten-free diet and they don't get better, and then they say, this diet isn't the right diet for me, and then they quit. And what I want to make sure you understand is that the diet may still be right for you. It may not have resolved your autoimmune condition, in part because there's other things that are also contributing to that autoimmune condition, and that you haven't looked at those things yet. And so again, if we look at autoimmune disease in its entirety, going gluten-free is just one piece that can be very helpful for some people, but it's not the only piece, and you certainly want to investigate the potential for other triggers being there. And make sure you check out this video here and this one here. You might find some answers for your health in them. And also, hit the subscribe button below if you like what you're watching. We want you to be able to get updates when we post new videos. And come over to Gluten Free Society right here, where you can grab your free gluten-free survival guide, no charge to you. We just want to help you navigate the gluten-free diet.